Thank you for having me on this platform. My name is Munachiso, and my topic today is From Crisis to Insights, leveraging data analytics to shape pandemic era educational technology innovations. Over the next few minutes, we'll just explore how COVID-19 pandemic forced education systems worldwide to adapt and how data analytics became a powerful tool to tackle these challenges. So when COVID-19 pandemic hit, education as we knew it was, completely turned upside down. Over 1.6 billion learners, were affected globally. Schools were shut down and we had to figure out how to, keep the learning going and really fast. This is where data analytics stepped in as a game changer. Whether it was through tracking student progress in real time or designing tools to keep learners engaged, analytics helped us navigate this new reality. And this interactive map that I'll open real quick, I don't know, can you see the interactive map or is it still the slide showing?
You can't see the map.
Okay.
I think you need to share a different screen.
Yes. Okay. So this map from World Bank Group is basically showing school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the pink is schools that were country that had schools closed in select areas. Let's say like Russia, Nigeria, Morocco. And the red are countries that had schools completely closed, like Sudan, Mexico, and so forth. Then yellow are countries that, that had schools open with limitations like the US, Canada, China, and so on and so forth. So here's a quick roadmap of what we'll cover today. So we'll start with background and literature review, walk through methodology, the key findings, discussion and implications, and then conclusions and future directions. Before the pandemic, education was mostly in person, as we all knew it. Teachers in classrooms, students at desks. But when the pandemic hit, we had to pivot almost immediately and overnight to remote settings. If we all recall, that was when Zoom became extremely popular. And it wasn't easy. Many educators struggled to adapt, and inequalities became even more obvious. But data analytics stepped in to help. For example, platforms like Khan Academy used adaptive tools to customize lessons for each student, while predictive analytics helped schools identify students who were at risk of falling behind. This shift to data-driven solutions marked the start of a huge transformation in how we think about education. Now let's talk about what the research is telling us. There's been a lot of work done on this topic, and here are just some few key takeaways. First, Kovanovic and colleagues showed how predictive analytics can actually reduce dropout rates. That's a big deal when you think about how many students were at risk during the pandemic. Then Clark and his colleagues looked at adaptive learning platforms, and they found that these tools can, actually boost student engagement. But not all they found was smooth sailing. There were some that highlighted the struggles that resource-constrained regions faced, where access to technology was extremely limited. And finally, Rubel and Jones brought up some important ethical concerns, which are very, very important, like privacy and bias in how these tools are being used. So there's really a lot to unpack here. Now, how this study was approached started by pulling together data from three main sources: peer-reviewed articles about educational technology and analytics, case studies like the Arizona State University, which used predictive analytics to support students, and Eneza Education in Sub-Saharan Africa, which used SMS-based learning tools. And finally, looked at global comparisons to understand the differences between developed and developing regions. From there, thematic analysis was used to, identify the patterns, things like the impact of adaptive learning, ethical challenges, disparities in how these tools were adopted, which gave a full picture of what was happening. Excuse me. Now going into the findings, the first one, regional disparities. One of the biggest takeaways is just how different the adoption rates were across the regions. Now this figure shows us in the US, adoption rates were around 85%. In the UK, wasn't far behind at 78%. But then look at countries like India, which 60%, not as bad, but Sub-Saharan Africa at just 42%. What does this tell us? It highlights the gap in infrastructure and resources between developed and developing countries. As one of the researchers in Gambia pointed out, these gaps make it so much harder for schools in areas where the resources are constrained to implement these tools effectively. Clearly there's a lot of work to be done here. Now, looking at the power of predictive analytics, this chart shows the impact. Before schools implemented predictive tools, retention rates were around 68%. But afterward, it jumped to a staggering 87%. That's nearly 20% increase. One example is still Arizona State University. They used analytics to identify students who were struggling and offered targeted support. This not only kept students in school, but it also improved overall their overall experience. But, and this is a big but, we have to be careful, because as some researchers like Rubel reminded us, we need to make these tools that we're using ethical, and we shouldn't reinforce, so it doesn't reinforce existing inequalities. Of course, everything is not smooth sailing. There were some challenges too. This table lays it out nicely. For example, the teacher-student interaction, even interaction between students, it took a hit during online learning. It's hard to build relationships through a screen. A lot of students did struggle with isolation, which impacted their social and emotional development. And then there's the issue of digital inequities. Not everyone in every region had access to the internet or a reliable device, but there are solutions. For instance, interactive tools can help bring back that personal connection. It might not be the same. It definitely will not be the same as in person, but it still helps. And subsidizing internet access can make learning more equitable. These are things that we need to prioritize moving forward. So where do we go from here? Let's start with addressing disparities. Countries need to work together to close the gaps in infrastructure and access. Then there's the ethical side of it. Privacy and fairness cannot be afterthoughts. If we're going to use data to make decisions, it has to be done transparently. And finally, the future. Technologies like AI, augmented reality, and virtual reality, they have so much potential to making learning more immersive and, personalized. But we also need to use them very, very wisely. In conclusion, data analytics, it really was a lifeline during the pandemic. It helped us navigate a huge crisis that we hadn't experienced before, but it also revealed some deep inequities in education. The challenge now is to take these insights, or those insights that we have, and use them to create better and more equitable system. And as I like to say, the crisis gave us insights. Let's use them to shape, the future. Thank you.